The millionaire finds his lost daughter begging on the street with a shocking plea. The city buzzed around Jonathan Blake like a wild storm. Honking cars, shouting vendors, blurred faces rushing past. Early spring air carried a chill, mixing hope with the heaviness of hidden battles nobody dared to show. Jonathan's expensive leather shoes clicked sharply on cracked pavement, his sharp eyes cutting through the crowd. Yet, inside, a hollow ache gnawed at him. Success, power, money, all felt useless today. Then, like a flash, he saw her. A small girl, no older than 10, crouched on the dirty street corner. Her clothes hung in tatters, dirt streaked across her pale face. She held up a crumpled sign, letters uneven. "Please, help, my daddy." Her voice, barely a whisper, trembled with a cracked desperation that stabbed straight into Jonathan's chest. A shiver ran down his spine. His breath caught. The harsh sunlight broke through clouds for a moment, catching the girl's wide, terrified eyes. They were startling, something hauntingly familiar in their pleading glare. People around them murmured, some stepping away with disapproving looks, others glancing with pity. An old vendor whispered, "Why does she look like she's from one of those rough neighborhoods? Don't bring trouble here." Another man muttered, "Nothing good happens to kids on this street." Jonathan's heart hammered so loud it felt like it would burst. His hands trembled as he stepped closer, voice barely steady. "Hey, are you all right? What's your name?" The girl flinched but didn't run. Instead, she raised her eyes and said in a fragile voice, "Daddy, please come home. I've waited so long." The words echoed inside him, triggering a rush of memories, locked away in dusty corners. Years ago, before the boardrooms, before the fortune, before the silence took over, he remembered a little girl's laugh, a soft crow. His chest tightened with panic and hope crashing together. Was this impossible? Could this abandoned child really be the daughter he lost? The one he never stopped searching for? The one he thought was gone for good? The marketplace faded back into view. The cold wind slapped against his face. The murmurs of the crowd grew louder, harsh and confused. The girl's fingers gripped his pant leg, weak but steady. Jonathan swallowed hard. Rage, guilt, fear, and longing tangled inside him. The world seemed to hold its breath around them. Could she be his? Or was this some cruel trick of fate? He had to know. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube removed their subscriptions without warning. Just quickly check that red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I don't want you to miss any exclusive content coming your way. And while you're at it, leave that powerful like. It helps me a lot with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, what city are you watching from? I love getting to know each incredible person who is part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's interact. Jonathan swallowed hard. Rage, guilt, fear and longing tangled inside him. The world seemed to hold its breath around them. Could she be his? Or was this some cruel trick of fate? He had to know. He crouched slowly, careful not to scare her off. "What's your name, sweetheart?" The girl blinked up at him, eyes wide and shimmering with something like hope. Emily. Emily. The name hit him like a punch. That was her name, his little girl's name. Jonathan reached out, trembling, to brush a stray lock of hair from her dirt-streaked cheek. He felt the roughness of tears on her face. "Emily, it's me, Daddy." Her hand tightened on his pant leg. The crowd around them slipped into a hushed silence, the noise of the market fading like a distant storm. Then, just as Jonathan's heart dared to believe, a sharp crack echoed through the street. A gunshot. People screamed. The girl jerked violently, eyes bursting with raw terror. Jonathan hoisted Emily to his chest as chaos exploded, pushing bystanders, scattering like frightened birds. A man burst out from the crowd, shouting, "Stop! Don't move!" But Jonathan couldn't see the man's face clearly. Only the cold glint of the gun, aimed right at them. "Who is this kid?" the voice barked, rough and furious. "You trying to drag her back into the gutter?" Jonathan's mind spun. The words hit like ice. The man stepped closer, and Jonathan froze. That's when the horrific truth slammed through him. This stranger was someone he'd known too well. A bitter rush of memories cracked the surface. Angry fights, harsh promises, broken trust. The man's eyes locked onto Emily's, dark and unyielding. "Emily," he hissed, "you're no one's daughter." Jonathan's heart shattered. The crowd's murmurs turned venomous. "Scammer," whispered a woman nearby. "Street kid playing tricks." Emily's small fingers curled tight around Jonathan's shirt. "Daddy, please," she begged, voice a whisper beneath the chaos. Jonathan forced himself to speak against the rising tide of fear. "Who are you? What do you want from her?" The man sneered. "I want to make sure no one steals from me. That girl's been with me for years." Jonathan's blood turned to ice. "No," he heard himself say. "She's mine. I lost her years ago. She's my daughter." The man laughed, a cruel sound that cut sharper than a knife. "You have no idea what she's done, what she's hiding." Emily's face crumpled. She shook her head violently. No, it's not true." The man's shadow fell over them like a storm. He glanced around, voice dropping low. "She's dangerous. She's a thief, a liar." Jonathan's knees almost buckled, but Emily grabbed his collar, her eyes blazing for the first time. "Daddy, you have to believe me. I'm coming home." Suddenly, a sharp sob escaped Jonathan's throat. The market seemed to freeze. The city's hum turned distant, as if the world pulled back, waiting. Then the man pulled out a thick envelope, tossing it at Jonathan's feet. Jonathan's eyes flicked down and froze. His name, scrawled on a folded letter. Inside, crisp photographs of Emily holding stacks of cash, sneaking out of buildings nobody should have seen her in. And worse, There, in one haunting shot, was Emily standing over a broken window, a freshly stolen necklace glittering in her hand. Jonathan's hands shook violently. Had he been tricked? Was this nightmare the truth? His daughter, lost, yes, but also a stranger he didn't know? Before he could speak, Emily's voice broke through the storm, trembling but firm. "Daddy, I didn't know how to tell you, but I had to survive." Jonathan's chest clenched until it hurt so badly he wanted to scream. The crowd's eyes bore down on him, both accusing and confused. His daughter, a thief, a liar, or a victim of cruel fate? He barely heard the distant wail of sirens, growing louder. Everything he thought he knew was crumbling. And one question thundered through his mind, louder than any other. Who is Emily, really? And who has been hiding her from him all these years? The sirens grew louder, a sharp wail piercing the thick tension rolling through the street. Jonathan held Emily tight, her small hands clutching his coat, her breath ragged but steady against his chest. The crowd had stepped back, frozen in a mix of dread and curiosity, as if waiting for the next blow to fall. Jonathan's heart pounded so hard it blurred the edges of everything. He forced himself to look at Emily's face, dirty, tear-streaked, trembling, but still, deep down, a flicker of the little girl he once knew. "Emily," he whispered, voice cracking, "please tell me the truth. What are you hiding?" She swallowed, blinking up at him. "I didn't want you to find out like this. I swear, Daddy. I just wanted to survive." Before Jonathan could respond, the rough voice barked again. "Enough!" The man stepped forward, jaw tight. "You don't belong here. She's mine. She's been mine." "Liar!" Jonathan growled. Then suddenly, the stranger's hand moved fast, too fast, and Jonathan's world spun sideways. A flash of metal, a gun pressed to Jonathan's temple. The crowd gasped. The old vendor nearly toppled his cart. Emily screamed, clutching Jonathan harder. But then, shock hit like a hammer. The man lowered the gun, not to Jonathan, but toward Emily. "No!" Jonathan shouted, panic roaring through his veins. Emily's wide eyes locked with his, cruel fear and something else, something like cold calculation lurking behind them. "Daddy," she whispered, but there was no plea, just a strange calm. Time slowed. Jonathan felt his knees buckle. Emily raised her hand suddenly, fingers slipping from his coat, then snatched a hidden blade from the ragged folds of her jacket. The crowd gasped louder. The man stepped back, startled. "Emily, what?" Jonathan barely breathed. Her voice wasn't the tremble he expected. It was sharp, merciless. "You think you can just walk back in and fix everything? I'm not your little girl." The crowd recoiled as she lunged, slashing at the man's arm. He howled, dropping the gun. Chaos exploded. Jonathan caught Emily's wrist, heart breaking into pieces. "Stop! What are you doing?" His voice cracked, desperate. "Surviving," she said, eyes blazing. "Surviving the lies you fed me." Jonathan felt something inside shatter. The hope, the memories, They crashed down. A hand gripped his shoulder. He spun, his assistant sharp-faced but pale. "Mr. Blake, this isn't right. Emily, she's not who she says she is." "What do you mean?" Jonathan's voice was barely a whisper. The assistant pulled out a photo, flipping it around. Jonathan's jaw dropped cold. The photo was recent. Emily, but with another man, in the plush corner of a nightclub, laughing as he handed her a thick envelope. And behind them, a familiar building. The very estate Jonathan had just sold off. The one he'd fought was long abandoned. "Sir," the assistant's voice faltered, "we trace this to a high-level con operation. They used a girl named Emily." Jonathan looked back at her. Emily, her eyes hard, guarded. "Your daughter never lived here," the assistant said quietly. "She's been a weapon, planted to break you, to steal your empire." Jonathan's chest felt like it was being crushed by an iron fist. Emily's lips pressed tight. "Daddy," she said softly, "truth or lie, impossible to tell. Everything you think you know, it's a lie." A sudden crack, not a gunshot, but a scream. The crowd parted like a wave. A woman stepped forward from the shadows, tall, icy, eyes full of cold fire. Emily's expression snapped to fear. Jonathan froze. The woman's hand shimmered with a badge. "Jonathan Blake," she said, voice cutting through the chaos. "I'm Detective Harper. We have a warrant for your arrest." Jonathan's breath hitched. Emily looked at him. No longer the child begging for a home, but a stranger standing in the eye of a storm. "You're under investigation for fraud, illegal dealings, and," she hesitated, "for hiding something about your past that changes everything." Jonathan's world cracked open beneath his feet. "Emily," he whispered, the name now a question burning in the air. Who was she? Who was he? And what dark truth was waiting to drag them both down into the unknown? Jonathan's breath hitched. The badge in Detective Harper's hand gleamed like a cold promise, slicing through the last threads of hope tangled inside him. Emily's eyes, so fierce a moment ago, now darted nervously, her hands trembling at his chest. "Under arrest," Harper said, voice sharp as broken glass, "for fraud, conspiracy, and obstruction of justice." The crowd's murmurs shifted into a low roar. Accusation, disbelief, shock. Jonathan stepped forward, desperate. "Detective, wait! Emily is my daughter. She doesn't belong to this world, not this life." Harper's glance flicked to Emily, skeptical but steady. "Sir, evidence says otherwise." Before anyone could react, a sudden, bone-chilling snap shattered the uneasy calm. A loud crack, but not a gunshot. It came from the side alley, where a black van had been parked, unnoticed. The rear doors smashed open, and a swarm of masked officers poured out, blitzing the gathering crowd. Jonathan's heart slammed into his ribs as men in tactical gear surrounded the scene. "Clear the perimeter," a commander barked. Emily shook violently, tears streaming down dirt-streaked cheeks. "Daddy!" she screamed, writhing in Jonathan's arms. Harper's phone buzzed, her face blurring into alarm. She glanced at the screen, then back to Jonathan, voice dropping. "Sir, I think you need to hear this." Jonathan strained to listen. A crackling voice came through the line. "We intercepted a transmission." "Transmissions?" Jonathan echoed, dread curling tight. "Encrypted files were recovered from Emily's phone," Harper explained. "Not just con games, sir. These files reveal something far bigger. A secret network tied to you." Jonathan's blood froze. Emily's hand slipped from his coat. She pulled out a thin device, small, sleek, and pressed a button. Immediately, an image flickered on a nearby vendor's broken tablet. A grainy video played. Jonathan younger, standing beside a man in an underground warehouse. Crates marked with the logo of his company. But the man wasn't just anyone. He was the very stranger who confronted Emily minutes ago. And then, Jonathan's eyes widened in horror. The man stepped closer, handing a small bundle to a child. But it wasn't Emily. It was a younger version of Jonathan himself, a boy no older than 10, wearing a different name tag pinned awkwardly on his shirt. Jonathan gasped, stumbling back. The crowd fell deathly silent, watching every flicker. Detective Harper's voice cut through, cold and steady. "Sir, that boy is you. Or at least, it appears you were never just the father in this story." Emily's trembling voice broke again. "I'm not your daughter, because I never was meant to be your child. Not really." Jonathan's mouth went dry. The video slid into a new frame. Images flashing fast. Documents, calendars, and secret meetings. A ledger showing money flowing not to Jonathan Blake, but to a different name, James Porter. His hands clutched the table as a terrifying fact broke loose inside him. This was no case of lost family, no street con. Jonathan wasn't just a businessman. He was hiding a life he'd never admitted, a life someone else tried desperately to erase. Emily looked up, eyes burning, whispered, "I'm not your daughter, because you're not Jonathan Blake." The world spun, pieces shattered. The man from the alley was his brother. The injured child in the video was the real boy Jonathan had stolen, taken from a life that wasn't his. Everything, the fortune, the pain, the lies, was a mask, a stolen identity. And now the truth stood between them like a knife. Jonathan's name was not his. His daughter was not real. Then, before he could grasp the nightmare, sirens screamed closer, and hands gripped his shoulders. "Time's up," Harper said, voice low. "You have no idea what you're facing. But the hardest part hasn't even begun." Jonathan's chest burned. Emily's stare pierced him, challenging. "Who am I? Who are you? And what the hell did we both become?" The crowd watched, breath caught. The city didn't blink. And Jonathan Blake, if that was even his name, stood on the edge of a dark, terrible truth, about to swallow them whole. Jonathan's breath hitched. The badge in Detective Harper's hand gleamed like a cold promise, slicing through the last threads of hope tangled inside him. Emily's eyes, once fierce, now darted nervously, trembling in his grasp. "Under arrest," Harper snapped, voice sharp and cold, "for fraud, conspiracy, and obstruction of justice." The crowd's murmurs swelled into a roar, shock, disbelief, whispers like thunder rolling through empty streets. Jonathan stepped forward, desperation burning in his voice. "Detective, wait. Emily's my daughter. She doesn't belong in all this." Harper glanced at Emily. Skepticism sharpened her gaze. "Sir, the facts don't lie." Before the world could spin any further, a sudden snap, a deafening crack like glass shattering, sliced through the tension. The crowd froze. Heads whipped toward a dark alley just off the bustling street. From the shadowed depths, a figure stumbled out, clutching something, blood slick across their hands. "Jamie?" Jonathan gasped, heart stopping. The figure collapsed at Jonathan's feet. The man from the alley. Jonathan's brother. Eyes wide. Desperate. Harper moved forward fast, but Jamie's voice cut through the chaos. Cracked and urgent. "Stop! Stop all of it!" he gasped, pain twisting every word. "You don't understand. None of this is real." Jonathan knelt beside him, hands trembling. "What do you mean? What are you saying?" Jamie's bloodshot eyes locked on Emily, then on Jonathan. She's not Emily." The crowd sucked in their breath. Emily stiffened. Jamie forced out a strangled, ragged laugh. "She's a ghost, an invention, a phantom created to shatter you, to erase you." "What?" Jonathan's chest tightened. "She's my daughter. I've felt her in my bones for years." Jamie coughed, blood dripping from cracked lips. "No, the real child died years ago. Died before you ever left. I hid it. We hid it." Harper's face hardened, disbelief mixing with suspicion. Jonathan's throat closed. "I don't understand." Jamie grabbed Jonathan's sleeve, fingers icy and weak. "You were never who you think you are." His voice dropped to a whisper cracked with agony. "Because you stole her life." A collective gasp exploded through the crowd. Emily's face twisted. Shock, panic, then cold fury. Jonathan's mind exploded, thoughts crumbling. "What are you talking about?" Jamie pressed on, weak but relentless. "The boy in the video? That's you. Not the real Jonathan Blake, but the shadow you took his name from. The real boy, my nephew, your daughter's brother, is dead." "Dead?" Jonathan shook, broken. "No," Jamie rasped. "You killed him, and took everything that wasn't yours." Emily stepped back slowly, eyes wide with terror, and something else, horror or truth. "Daddy," she whispered, voice cracking, "I'm not your daughter, because I'm him." The street fell silent. Jonathan's heart shattered into sharp pieces. Emily lifted her sleeve, revealing a faint but unmistakable scar, the same mark the boy in the video had. His breath hitched, mind reeling. "You're James?" Jonathan stammered. "Not Emily?" "Emily, no, James." Nodded slowly, tears streaming down dirt-stained cheeks. "I escaped. I hid the truth. I became someone else to survive." The crowd watched, stunned. the weight of betrayal and pain thick in the air. Detective Harper stepped forward, voice low but biting. "This changes everything. You're not a father reuniting with a lost child. You're a man haunted by a guilt you barely remember." Jonathan's world cracked open wider. He looked at James. This boy, this girl, who had stolen his heart under a false name. The night closed in around them, ragged breaths and sirens wailing, far off, and the question hammered louder than before. Who am I really? And who and what have I become? Jonathan's breath hitched as he stared down at James, the girl who wasn't his daughter, the boy who wasn't who he claimed to be. The cold evening air felt heavy, thick with silence and disbelief. The crowd was frozen, eyes wide and mouths half opened, waiting for the next blow. Then, just as Jonathan opened his mouth to speak, the world jerked, like the whole street shuddered beneath him. A distant siren blared, sharp and urgent, closer than before. But before anything else could happen, a sharp crack split the air. Not a gunshot. No, something worse. A piercing scream ripped through the crowd, cruel and desperate. Heads whipped to the street behind Detective Harper. A van's back doors threw open violently, and out spilled a swarm of dark figures, masked, moving fast, their shadows swallowing the street light. Chaos exploded. Jonathan's heart pounded so hard it blocked out everything. The masked figures stormed forward, not at Jonathan or the crowd, but straight toward Emily, straight toward James. "Get back!" Harper yelled, but the crowd scattered in panic, pressed against walls and vendors. Jonathan's eyes burned with terror. "James! Emily! Wait!" But it was too late. One masked figure grabbed James, holding arms tight like steel. Panic struck in James's eyes. Real, raw terror. Jonathan lunged forward, hands grasping air. But then, a voice, calm and cold, cut through everything. "Enough!" The crowd froze again. A tall woman stepped forward from the darkness, pulling off her mask slowly. She was stunningly familiar, too familiar. Her dark eyes scanned Jonathan, then James. "Dad," she said softly. Jonathan's chest slammed shut. "No," he whispered, voice cracking. It was Sarah, his wife, his dead wife. Sarah, who'd vanished years ago without a trace. Declared dead in a cold case nobody had solved. She looked nothing like a ghost now. Strong, sharp, and alive. "What the hell?" Jonathan's throat closed. Sarah's gaze never wavered. "All of it," she said, voice breaking but steady. "The lies, the disappearance, the fake daughter. It was me. I made it happen." James, trembling in the masked grip, stared at her in disbelief. "And you," Sarah said, turning to James, "were supposed to be my safety net, my proof." Jonathan shook his head like he'd hit a wall. Sarah took a step closer, her voice dropping. "You never lost the daughter." She pulled out a small envelope, thin, yellowed. Jonathan caught his breath as she flipped it open. Inside, a birth certificate. his real name. And beneath it, another name, James Blake. James's eyes wide again. Sarah smiled bitterly. You raised a ghost because the real child was taken. Jonathan sank to his knees, the ground seeming to crack beneath him. Who took him? Sarah's eyes darkened. That's what I've been trying to find out. Suddenly, the masked figures released James. He stumbled forward, collapsing into Jonathan's arms, shaking. But Harper stepped forward, her voice urgent and cold. Stop. This goes deeper than any of you know. Jonathan looked at Sarah, then James. My family? My truth? Sarah shook her head. No, none of it is real. Not yet. A phone buzzed in Sarah's jacket pocket. She glanced down and paled. The message hit her like a bullet. They're coming back, she said, voice trembling. The ones who started it all. The ones who don't want the truth out. Before anyone could react, the street lights blacked out. Total darkness swallowed the market. A silence worse than any scream. And then, just as panic took hold, a faint voice whispered in the darkness, Dad, don't trust her. James's words cut sharper than knives. In that black silence, Jonathan's world shattered again. Who was lying? Who was telling the truth? And who, or what, had they really been summoned for all this time? The night held its breath, and Jonathan Blake, if that was even his name, stood trapped between the past he'd lost and the nightmare still to come. The street was plunged into thick, suffocating darkness, a silence so heavy it pressed on Jonathan's chest, making it hard to breathe. Then, a faint whisper sliced through the black. Dad, don't trust her. James's shaky voice echoed close, full of fear and something else. Warning. Jonathan's mind raced, heart pounding. Every beat, slamming like a hammer in his skull. Sarah stood barely 5 feet away, her eyes cold but soft, shadowed by pain and secrets. For a moment, the air crackled between them, wordless, sharp. Then, a sudden crack shattered the tense stillness. From the folds of Sarah's jacket, a tiny device beeped twice in rapid succession. She froze, eyes flickering with panic. Jonathan blinked, confused, and then the impossible happened. With a sudden jerk, Sarah's entire body convulsed violently, her face twisting in agony. The world tilted as she collapsed to the ground. Sarah! Jonathan gasped, dropping to his knees beside her. Her eyes fluttered open, but it wasn't her face staring back. The skin pulsed and shifted as if melting under his gaze. Her mouth opened, but no real voice came out. Just a cold, metallic rasp. System override. The voice hissed, unnatural and harsh. Harper's face drained of color as she stepped forward carefully, eyes locked on Sarah's twitching form. You're not real, Harper breathed, voice trembling just enough. Sarah's body twitched again, limbs stiffening like rigid wires, then shattered with a harsh, grinding noise, a mechanical whir, barely human. Jonathan's knees buckled, heart hammering like a frantic drum. "Sarah," his voice caught in a choked sob. What are you?" From beneath the torn jacket, gleaming circuits and wires glinted in the faint streetlight. Her pale skin peeled back slowly, revealing panels and blinking lights flashing beneath. "She's not your wife," Harper said softly, but with grim steel. "She's something else, a machine. A device crafted to destroy." James's face twisted in disbelief, tears mixing with dirt. "She lied. All of it," James whispered. "Everything she told us. It was a trap." Jonathan's mind spun. This wasn't just a wife who had vanished. It wasn't a reunion at all. This was a lie shattering every piece of his world down to dust. But the nightmare didn't stop. From the darkness near the van, another figure stepped forward. A man with a cold smile, eyes like steel blades. "Too late, Jonathan," the man said, voice smooth as ice. "You played your part well." Jonathan's breath caught. The man lifted his sleeve, flashing a tattoo, a long hidden mark on Jonathan's own forearm, one he never remembered. "Your life," the man continued, "your empire, all a game, and you, just a pawn we placed on the board." The crowd whispered in shock. "Pawns? Conspiracy?" Jonathan's chest tightened, breath shallow. "Who are you?" he demanded, voice trembling with rage and fear. The man's smile twisted, cruel and cold. "I'm the one who built you, the one who took your past, molded your identity, erased your history." Jonathan's heart stopped. His hands shook violently. This wasn't just a lost family. You were never a man. You were constructed. A fabricated identity, a weapon disguised as a father. James stepped forward, voice raw but steady. "All those memories, lies programmed into your mind." Jonathan's scream caught in his throat. Sarah's mechanical eyes blinked once, strange and cold. "I am your creator," she said, not as a wife, but a machine made to command. The city's night swallowed the chaos. Jonathan's world vaporized behind the flood of truth. He was not a father. He was not a man. He was a manufactured ghost, designed by enemies to be broken, and now unmasked. The screen of his life cracked wide open. And in the silence, one unbearable question tore through everything. If you're not who you think you are, then who the hell are you? The cold night hung thick around Jonathan, as Sarah's mechanical shell twitching on the pavement sent a shudder through the crowd. His chest burned with a pain so raw it swallowed his breath. The man with the cold smile, his puppeteer, loomed tall, his words cutting deep. "You're a pawn, a shadow, a ghost without a past." Jonathan's knees trembled, his hands shook like fragile glass ready to shatter. He stared at what once had been his wife, but now was a machine built for destruction. A sharp scream ripped through him, but then silence settled again, heavy and suffocating. Suddenly, the faint hum of a distant engine stabbed the quiet. Lights flickered in the alley shadows, red and blue blinking fast. A siren's wail growing louder. Relief flickered like a fragile flame. Maybe someone was coming to save them. Maybe this nightmare was ending. But before hope could root, a sharp crack exploded, metal against metal. Jonathan's head snapped up. Across the street, a rusty dumpster toppled over violently. And through the chaos stepped a figure he never expected. A woman, older now, hair streaked with gray, but eyes burning bright. "Dad," she whispered, voice trembling, but fierce. "It's me, Anna." Silence slammed in. Jonathan blinked, stunned. "Anna, but you disappeared. Years ago," he breathed, heart pounding like a drum. "Yeah," she said, stepping into the flickering streetlight, the glow catching the scar on her cheek. The same one Jonathan had seen in his nightmares. "I ran. I had to. I escaped from them." The crowd gasped. "Who?" Jonathan's voice cracked. Anna's stare cut through the doubt, sharp and desperate. "The ones who built you. The ones who took everything." Jonathan shook his head, voice low, trembling. "But you're not your daughter," Anna said fast, voice tight with pain. "I'm your sister, the real one." Time slowed. The crowd went cold. Jonathan's world spun on its axis. His throat tightened. He could hardly swallow. "How?" was all he managed. "My memories were stolen. They wiped me away, made me disappear. And then him, the fake you, stepped in." Her eyes locked on James, who was trembling in Jonathan's arms. "You've been feeding lies into a lie," Anna whispered. "And now they want to erase me too." A sudden bang echoed nearby. The masked men surged forward, blocking Anna's path. Jonathan's arms tightened around James. "No!" he shouted, heartbreaking. Anna held up a hand, voice rising above the chaos. "Listen, there's something inside you. A trigger they planted to control you both. To destroy us all." Jonathan's vision flickered. A sharp pulse throbbed behind his eyes. He blinked hard. Suddenly, beneath his tattered coat, a cold metal plate pressed against his chest. Something unfamiliar but real. Panic exploded in waves. Harper's voice cracked. "Watch him! Don't let him out of sight!" Jonathan staggered back, clutching his chest, pain ripping through. Anna moved forward, desperate. "You're not just a pawn. You're a weapon. And if they activate it—" Before anyone could react, Jonathan gasped. His fingers grazed a thin wire, glowing faintly beneath his skin. Warmth seethed, then flashed, then blew sparks. The street plunged into violent light and sound. An explosion ripped the night apart. Glass shattered. Screams filled the air. Jonathan was thrown off his feet, and in the chaos, the truth hit harder than any bullet. They never stole his past. They built his future into a bomb ticking beneath the skin of a man who didn't even know he was dead. Amid the smoke and fire, Jonathan's mind screamed. Who planted the trigger? Who pulled the strings? And how long before it was too late? The city burned. The crowd scattered. And in the heart of destruction stood a man with no past. A girl who wasn't his daughter. A sister lost to secrets. And a future more terrifying than he ever imagined. Because this wasn't just a story about stolen lives. This was about a countdown. And Jonathan Blake, if that was even his name, was trapped in the fuse. The explosion had rattled the street like a thunderclap. Jonathan lay sprawled on the cracked pavement, ears ringing, heart hammering against his ribs like a caged beast. Smoke curled in thick black waves, drifting into the night, as frantic screams sliced through the chaos. He blinked hard, wiping soot and sweat from his burning eyes. Around him, voices shouted commands, feet pounded, and someone sobbed broken words nearby. His chest ached sharply. Something heavy and cold pressed beneath his ribs. James, still trembling, dirt-streaked, fragile, was caught in his arms. Jonathan gripped him tight, refusing to let go. "Stay with me," he whispered, voice raw. Then, from the shadows, Harper's sharp voice cut through the bedlam. "Get down! Incoming!" Heads snapped up as more figures exploded from their hiding spots. Helmets gleaming in the weak streetlight. Bullets ricocheted. Crack! Crack! Shards of glass scattering like deadly rain. Jonathan shoved James behind a toppled street vendor's cart. His heart crashed as a bullet ripped through metal inches from his head, sending sparks flying. "Who's shooting?" Fultz, he shouted, panic strangling the words. A man's cold voice drifted from the darkness. "Step away, Blake. You've been a problem for too long." Jonathan froze. The voice, not unfamiliar, came dripping with menace. "Anna!" he gasped, barely believing his ears. From the edge of the smoke, she stepped forward. Older, battle-scarred, eyes sharper than ever. But something was wrong. Her face twitched unnaturally, like a mask caught between anger and pain. "I'm sorry," she said, voice shaking but steady. "You had to see it yourself." Before Jonathan could ask what she meant, the ground beneath them shuddered again. A sudden burst of heavy footsteps approached, fast. Faster than anyone could react. Then, boom! A deafening blast slammed into the crowd, sending bodies flying, dust choking the air. Jonathan hit the ground hard, breath ripped from his lungs. Lying dazed, he barely caught the flicker of movement nearby. Sarah, no, the machine, crashed against a burnt-out car. Sparks pouring from torn metal joints. His mind scrambled. Was this bigger than them? But then, the impossible happened. From the wreckage, a figure dragged itself forward. The man with the cold smile. The puppeteer who'd haunted Jonathan's shattered past. His face was bleeding, twisted in a grimace. "You think this ends with fire and metal?" he hissed, voice crawling like poison. "You're just a piece on a board, and this game, it's far from over." Jonathan's breath caught. His eyes widened as the man pulled something from his coat, a small, glowing chip humming with blue light. With a cruel smile, the man pressed it against Jonathan's chest, right above the cold metal plate beneath his skin. Jonathan gasped. Pain exploded in a white-hot burst. His vision went blurry, and the world spun sideways. But the chip wasn't a trigger. It was something else. something worse. Suddenly, memories flooded back, images he didn't recognize. Faces, places, voices, screaming truths he never wanted to hear. And then, the final, shattering revelation. He wasn't Jonathan Blake, or James Blake. He was neither. He was the real problem. The original. The man he thought was his brother. The stranger who tried to erase him was him. A split in time, a fracture in memory. The enemy wasn't an outside force. It was his own fractured self, buried deep beneath layers of lies. James, Anna, Sarah. All echoes, shadows of a war that raged inside him. And now, the man with the chip, his true self, had come back to reclaim what was lost. The street fell silent, eyes wide with horror and disbelief. Jonathan's world cracked open, splintering into pieces darker than any night. He tried to scream, but no sound came, because the man standing before him, himself, smiled that cold, cruel smile and said, "Welcome back, Blake. It's time to wake up." And with that, everything he'd ever known shattered, leaving only the question hanging heavy in the smoky air. Who really was Jonathan Blake? And which version of him would survive the night? The night was thick with smoke and sirens, the chaos still swirling like a storm that wouldn't end. Jonathan lay on the cracked pavement, heart pounding like a drum in his chest, arms wrapped tight around James. No longer a girl, no longer his daughter, but something far more complicated, far more broken. Across the wreckage, the man who looked like him, his other self, stood motionless, gaze cold and unreadable. The city lights flickered above, casting long shadows that danced and twisted like ghosts. Jonathan forced himself up, every muscle burning, every breath raw. "Who am I?" he whispered, voice cracked and lost. "Will, am I really?" James looked up, eyes filled with tears and dirt. "You're someone caught between lies, between the past they stole and the future they want to write." Anna appeared just then, stepping through the haze. Her scarred face was firm, but her eyes held a fragile hope, like a flicker of light in a dark room. "We're more than their game," she said. "More than the ghosts they made us." Jonathan's chest tightened, a lump rising in his throat. Then what now? Before anyone responded, the distant rumble of engines grew louder. Blue and red lights flooded the street. Figures poured out of cars, the police, the ones who were supposed to bring order. But tonight just added to the noise. Detective Harper pushed through, her face serious. "We've got to move. This whole operation, it's bigger than any of us." Jonathan glanced at James, at Anna. The weight in his chest felt like it might split him open. Yet beneath the pain, something stirred. A flicker of fight, a glimmer of something left to hold on to. "We don't know who to trust," Anna said softly. "But we have to stick together, for now." James nodded, trembling. "I'm done hiding." The sirens blared louder as officers moved in on the puppeteer who'd pulled the strings, the man who claimed to shape Jonathan's life. But the real battle was inside, beneath the surface of all their masks. Jonathan's hands shook, reaching out to touch the cold metal under his shirt. The trigger still there, waiting. A weapon he hadn't chosen. But now it wasn't just about survival. It was about finding himself in the wreckage. And maybe, just maybe, rewriting the story. His eyes locked with James's. "Whatever comes next," he whispered, voice heavy but steady. "We face it, together." The city swallowed their small, raw promise. A new dawn waiting, just past the dark. But as the camera pulls back, the question lingers. How many faces do we wear before we lose ourselves? And what happens when the mask finally falls? The silence holds its breath. If you thought this story blew your mind, listen up. You need to subscribe now. Don't wait. Smash that subscribe button below right now so you don't miss any upcoming exclusive stories that dive even deeper. This is the moment to show your support. And don't stop there. Smash that like button like your life depends on it. It seriously feeds the algorithm and keeps these stories coming your way. I want to hear it all. Flood the comments with your reactions, your theories, every crazy idea about what just happened. This community lives because of you. And for the love of everything, instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see how this ends. Don't wait even one more second to share this explosive finale. Only true fans know how important it is to back the channel hard with these moves. So don't hold back. Make your mark now.